My name is Diane, and I'm always the person that's dedicated to do the announcements. So that's my thing, is I'm just doing announcements and answering general questions, I guess. So we will see all of you, hopefully, on Sunday, November 12th at noon at the fire department. We are going to be having a film called People versus Ancient Orange. Carol Van Strom, it's based upon her book, and I hear it's a pretty exciting film. We would like all of you to come and bring a friend. Should be a very interesting film to see. Our goal as a committee is to bring you a guest speaker each month and a film each month. So we're looking forward to having our first film happening at the fire department. In Walport.
Did you say the time on this?
Noon, 12 o'clock. The Saturday protests continue. Thank you. At 11 o'clock right here in Seal Rock. In order not to disrupt the businesses, we ask you to park on the north end of the parking beyond the wood carver shop. The protests go from 11 to 1, rain or shine. So make your signs waterproof, come with your slickers on and your rain boots and join the crowd. We are going to be scheduling a community party in December. We've done a lot of work since we found out about the spraying of Beaver Creek in August. And I mean, it's been a lot of work. And the community has bonded together over the issue of spraying. We want to be able to celebrate that with you. So please stay tuned. We don't have a date yet, but we will be putting a date together and asking you all to come and join us and celebrate, because we have done certain things that people thought were impossible. One of the things that we did was we got the landowner to not use a helicopter to spray the heck out of us. Instead, he has backpack spraying, and Jean Gerard is here. She's going to give us an update as far as the spraying that's going on up at Beaver Creek. Another thing that's happening is evidently they are being monitored. So she just shared with me that the Department of Forestry accidentally drove into her driveway and they were looking for them. And so these are like huge things, because this doesn't ever happen. Your words count. Every letter that you write to the editor, every letter that you write to the Department of Forestry, it all counts. So please keep that up. When you see Rebecca's wonderful letter to the editor, respond to that on Yahats News. Let everybody know that you support the things that she said, because that's why we're all here. We're all on the same page. I do want to generally announce that we are going to migrate our website and our name from Stop the Spray to Protecting Oregon Watersheds. The reason why we're doing that is because we want a name denoting what we stand for and not what we stand against. And so it's a whole shift a little bit as to why we're doing that, is to bring about positivity, and so we can really, again, bond together as a community and work towards protecting our watershed. And that includes anything that we need to do to make sure that we have clean water. So Jean.
Madam question.
Oh, yes.
What's the status with our water from Seal Rock Water District? Are we still online with them, or are we?
So we, ever since the spraying began, a week before the spraying began, Seal Rock Water District shut off the Beaver Creek intake.
Okay.
They didn't tell us. This is a reason to write a letter. This is a reason to let them know that you didn't like that, because they represent us. They should be forthcoming in information and telling us what they did. They shut off the water to Beaver Creek, and we are now getting our water from the Newport Water District, which is even worse because they spray all around Siletz. And so we are actually drinking tainted water, I'm sure. I'm not a scientist, so don't quote me, but I'm thinking that that is true.
When did the change in effect?
When did the change? A week?
What was the date?
I don't know, can I get back to you on that? I don't know,
Yeah,
because they did it
let us
in,
know this at times.
right, they did it in secret, and what I mean by secret is that they weren't public about it. I don't mean that they met in a back door somewhere with people, they just didn't make it public, and when you don't make it public, it appears to be in secret. A very good reason to go to the Seal Rock Water Board meeting, to tell them, hey, you represent us, you should be telling us what it is that you're doing. If you think that this is in our best interest, how many times do they test? What are they testing for? When are you getting the results back? Whatever it is that you want to put in a letter to say, hey, when you're getting a different water source, is it not incumbent upon you as our representatives to let us know that this is happening? Just food for thought.
Just
Yes.
one quick follow-up, how do we know that that happened? If it's in secret, how did we find out?
Adam told me.
Okay, thanks.
Adam told me in a conversation. John French wrote him about it. It was confirmed that it happened.
Okay.
That's funny. I wrote him on 10/11, asking him when the sign was gone, when the sign got taken down, the intake sign. He said that the
Welcome.
he didn't tell us that. He said the intake sign got taken down just because it was a federal sign and the project was completed, and he never responded to my question if it was
Well-
changed. And you said about 5 days before someone in the office told you, so that was
Yes.
it at like the
It might
at
have
like
to
the
do
5th
with,
of October,
yeah.
or
I'm
7th of October.
a pretty direct person. Maybe it was the way I asked it.
But
I
I'm
don't
just
know.
saying, so I wrote him on the 11th, and you said you had told me about 5 days before someone in the
Yeah.
office told you, so that puts it like. the
No,
si-
he
the-
told me.
The 6th of
He actually told me on the phone.
October,
Yeah.
the change.
So again, I think that, well, one thing, just know from the Seal Rock Water District
October
perspective, if I could just be objective about that and tell you that they have never had anybody come to a meeting before. They had no idea how to handle it. When 50 of us showed up to a meeting, they went, OMG, what do we do here? How do we handle that much public comment? How do we handle that many people zooming in? They didn't have a process in place. So when 14 of us showed up, they still had no idea what to do, actually. And my humble opinion is that we should be logging on. We should be zooming in. We should be making our voices heard. They are going to go with the public comment forum that the county commissioners have. So you can actually ask to have a public comment. You could do it that way, or you could send in a letter. If you send in a letter, they will not read it into the minutes. They will just give it to board members. So if you want your voice heard, you need to, it's the same with the county commissioners. If you want your voice heard, you have to log in on those meetings. I do try to post that on site when the next meeting is. Today and this evening, I'll make sure that I'll post when the next Seal Rock Water District meeting is so that you know. Look, you don't even have to say anything. Just zoom in. Just ask for that, zoom in, then they know we're watching and we're listening and we're interested about what's going on. Okay. There was
December
one
9th,
more
you want to
thing.
talk about December 9th?
Gene, you wanted Gene to say something.
I wanted Jean to say something. Jean, please say something.
Well, I'm not sure what you want me to say. All I told her was that I did run into a truck, the Department of Oregon Forestry, and they were looking for the backpack sprayers. And that was encouraging to me. That means the state is paying attention and they're monitoring what they're doing.
And that in itself is amazing because that right there never happens. And so these are celebrations that we really have to take a moment, congratulate ourselves, give yourselves a round of applause. Yay! For all Okay, December 9th.
At Crescent Elementary.
Oh, sorry. Oh, all right. So the other hat that I wear is I'm the Beachcomber Day secretary for Beachcomber Days in Wallport. So you see me post a lot on Facebook. I'm coordinating the Christmas Bazaar at Crestview Elementary on Saturday the 9th from 9 to 3 o'clock. We are going to have a booth there. We want you to come out and talk to the public. All you're doing is just saying what's going on at Beaver Creek, what's going on with the spraying in general in Oregon, how we are against it, we need everybody's support. We're just chit-chatting with our neighbors. We're just passing the word along and making people aware. We also have people on the steering committee are making wood rounds, thank you, so that we can have a make and take booth so they can make a Christmas ornament for their Christmas tree at our booth. So we have lots of things that are going on that day. If you're interested in helping out, we sure would love to have you come out. Again, this is an informal way of you meeting the public, of us passing the word along. I know that the slugs are gonna be there, right? You're gonna be, yay, they're gonna be playing on that day. So there will be music. There are 70 vendors that are going to be there. It's going to be fun for you, not just talking to the public, but it's one of the biggest events that we have in the wintertime here. So please think about that if you're interested. Please make sure you contact myself or Barbara, Deb, Laura. Let us know. Who else is here? Willow.
What is the date?
It's Saturday, December 9th. I hope that's not in... I hope that the garden club does not have.
Yeah, we're having a big sale that day.
Yeah, you do.
Thanks a
So
lot, folks.
that's okay. What we'll do is we'll make a poster for you guys and hang it up, so we'll send people your way.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
Where is it?
It's at Crestview Elementary School, Waldport, at the top of the hill. You don't have to come for the whole day. Tell us you'll be here for an hour. We'd be happy to have that. That way people don't have to be at the booth all day. Yes.
Yes, I was wondering, can this presentation, a recording of it be put on the KYAQ radio?
If they'll let us.
Well, they will let us. I'm on the board, they would love it.
Okay.
It really is important.
Okay.
Sure, I'll make you an MP3,
Thanks.
high quality MP3.
Assuming
Thank
that's
you.
okay with you, Ernie.
And I took more than my fair share of the time. The bathrooms are down there. Please shut off your cell phones. I will do the same. It's hard for me to remember that one. Right down the hallway this way. When we get done, we do need help putting the tables back down and picking up chairs. So please give us a little hand before you leave the building. And I'm going to turn it over to Barb, who's going to introduce our speaker of the day.
Thank you.
Hi. I think you all know who I am by now, but my name is Barbara Davis. I'm on the board of Lincoln County Community Rights, as well as being a helper person with Stop the Spray, now soon to be called Protect Oregon Watersheds. But I think most all of you, as a result of the Beaver Creek issue, are now aware of how much water and forests are tied together, right? But I think what you probably don't know is how much the forest practices that happen in Oregon impact your social and your economic well-being, both yourselves and your whole community. Ernie Niemi has lived in the Eugene area since 1978. He grew up in a rural area near Klamath Falls and has family roots in Lincoln County. He has an undergraduate degree in chemistry from the University of Oregon and a master's degree in public policy analysis from Harvard. For decades, Ernie has worked on forest and water management issues throughout the Pacific Northwest and is president of Natural Resources Economist, as well as the co-chair of the Forest Carbon Coalition, which has more than 70 member organizations across the U.S. Ernie has a unique talent for clarifying the issues which dictate current forestry practices, and we feel very, very lucky to have him here today on a rare visit from the Oregon coast. Please give him a warm Lincoln County welcome.
Thank you very much. Well, that's who I am to get started, but I do have a couple of things I want to emphasize right at the very beginning. One is, I am honored to be here. Okay, you all are doing things, I'm coming, maybe I can help you, I hope that I can, but I really am honored to be in your presence. It's not the reverse at all. The second thing is, I've heard myself talk quite a few times. I don't need to hear it anymore. So I'm here to help you. So if I say something and you don't quite understand it, or if I leave something out, or whatever, ask right then so that I can help you. It's not an encroachment at all. And then the third thing is, I'm an economist. And I'm going to talk about the timber industry in this state. And some of that's going to be what you may think is critical of the industry. But I'm going to ask you, please do not go away and say you heard this guy who is anti-timber, because I am not anti-timber. My rule is, if the benefits exceed the cost, cut the damn tree down. But if the costs exceed the benefits, don't. Because it's just stupid, because it hurts people when you do that. And that's the challenge that we have. Now, I understand you all are very focused on water issues here. I congratulate you on that. I've been talking about water, hoping that people would address some of the water issues in this state for a long time. And please find a seat someplace. But I'm not going to immediately talk about water. What I hope is that I can talk about some climate issues, and that the information I can give you about climate issues will help you be more effective accomplishing your goals with respect to water. So now a little bit of audience participation. There's going to be a test. Okay. I'm going to assume, unless you tell me otherwise, that you know what the climate crisis is, that there is one, and that it's serious. If not, raise your hand, and you will have social ostracism about that. But okay. The second thing is, well, first of all, so regarding the climate crisis, there's an organization called the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC. You probably have seen that. How many of you are aware of the biodiversity and ecosystem crisis? Yeah, some of you. How many of you are aware of the IPBES? Yeah. That's called the Intergovernmental Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services, IPBES. They're far less well known than the IPCC, but they are a parallel organization. And what they are telling us from the research is that the damage to biodiversity, damage to ecosystems, much of which comes from our damage to the climate, but not exclusively, because we're out here spreading around, on the ecosystem, that the damage to the biodiversity and ecosystem is at least as severe as the climate crisis. So we have two things, and I'm going to touch on them every once in a while. This is a diagram that you've probably seen, something very similar to it. This one actually comes from about 2014, and what it basically says is emissions. So here are the emissions from 1900, blah, 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 blah. And if we continue, we're going to keep going up like that, if we do business as usual. But if we want to avoid the most serious of the climate problems, we'd have to level off. Well, what have we done in the last 10 years?
Nothing.
We have rocketed right up here faster than that. So now, instead of leveling off, if we want to avoid the most serious of these problems with respect to climate, we now have to go down very quickly. You may have heard about James Hansen. He is the scientist who first brought to congressional attention that we have a climate crisis. And here's how it works. Here's how the science, we've known this science for a very, very long time. And here's it. This is his warning. We're running short on time. And in fact, research that was published this last week says if we want to avoid what for a long time we've agreed is a threshold between really terrible and just terrible, but terrible to really terrible, if we want to avoid that, crossing that threshold, we've got 5 years. We have 5 years to bring those emissions down. And James Hansen is saying, this is the reality. Maybe you and I don't get whacked so hard on it, but our kids do. Very hard. Last week, 15,000 scientists from around the world. The lead author comes from Oregon State. I know some people use PowerPoint and then they show it and they read it. I don't do that. So I'm assuming you can read. If you have problems seeing that, let me know and I will summarize it. Okay, Deb? Deb? One-third to one-half of the population will be at excess risk of death. Next. This is why it is a global crisis. And this ties back into the biodiversity. It's not just that. These scientists are saying we can't just go and deal with fossil fuels and continue to live the way that we live. We have to stop living the way that we live. It's not just fossil fuels. And then some of you know that there are these science journals. In order to have your research published, you send your article in, it's peer reviewed, and then it's published in a science journal. Again, last week, 200 journals. It focuses on health because the lead journal is the British Medical Journal that's been in existence since, king or queen, whatever, of Britain, for a long, long time. Well respected. And saying it's not just, climate, it's not just the environment, it's not just whales or bears, it's human health. It will kill us. Any of you live in Portland? Have people who live in Portland, relatives live in Portland? Any of them live in Portland in 2020? When the temperature went to 115 degrees in Portland, Oregon, for crying out loud. We know, the ones that we can count, 1,400 people were killed by that heat in this region. And we don't have systems to count people who die from heat in Oregon. Give me a break. Oregon is never that hot. Well, it is now. So that's that. Next. And again, we can't just deal with fossil fuels. We have to deal with all of the other things as well that are destroying our ecosystems. Next. So they came up with these solutions. And nobody in this room should be surprised. One of them is to cut emissions of greenhouse gases, mostly carbon dioxide, but also methane and others. And the other is to protect forests. And why protect forests?
Because it protects all of it.
Okay. Number one says stop sending the crap into the air. Number two says we have one hope for pulling it back out of the air, and those are trees. And that's it. The industry likes to say we're going to have these big, huge manufacturing systems that are going to suck carbon dioxide out of the air. And as far as I can tell, I'm not an expert, but as far as I can read all of the research, it's just a bunch of hooey. And that's what James Hansen actually said. I didn't put that part up. So here's we know what to do. Here's why we don't. You and I have been talking about we need to do something about climate for a very long time. James Hansen made his presentation in the 1980s to Congress, and we're still seeing that orange growth go right up like that instead of going down. Here's the reasons why. People said, the science. The science isn't real science. Or they just don't know. Or it's my job. I'm not going to do something about climate because it's my job. Or I'm not going to do something about ecosystem because it's my job. All the way down. Somebody else ought to do it, not me. Next. Here's one of the reasons why that previous slide looks like it does. Because we know that there is a deliberate, has been for a very long time, a deliberate campaign to con every one of us. Some of you may have heard of actually a brave step taken by Multnomah County. Multnomah County says, we're going to sue the bastards. They knew that they were putting stuff into the air that was going to come back down and kill people in Multnomah County, and it did. So we are going to sue them for the damages.
Who's them?
Who
is them?
Any idea who them is? Who are they suing? ExxonMobil, Chevron, Shell, BP. It's a list of about 20. The fossil fuel oil industry. Not really so much the coal industry, because we don't have coal here, so it's a harder thing to get through the courts. But the oil industry is active here in this state, active in Multnomah County, so they are suing. There's a suit in Hawaii that is underway right now to do the same thing. There was a similar suit in Montana that was heard several weeks ago or several months ago, and the judge came back and said, "You betcha. This is existential. This threatens human existence on Earth." And so yes, we have a right to sue to get damages. And of course, the industry is pushing back on all of that. Now, if I may, I'd like to tell you a brief little story, because I was at the table when something like this happened. When I was much, much younger, I worked for the timber industry and for Coos, Curry, and Douglas counties. And in 1976, the publisher of the Medford newspaper, the Medford Mail Tribune, the story goes, was sitting in his corner office and he looked down Main Street, if you will, and it was just one log truck after another. And he said, "Damn, can we just keep doing this, or are we going to ever run out of logs?" Powerful guy politically, so he contacted the governor. The governor contacted Oregon State University, who contacted and forced some professors to look at, are we going to run out of trees to kill? 1976, they published their report. The lead author is a man named John Buter, so at the time it was called the Buter Report. And it said, yeah, we have this amount of trees. We've cut it so quickly, we only have this amount of trees. We are going to run out of trees in 10 years. Well, it was my job to brief the county commissioners in Lane County, in Douglas County, in Roseburg, and the mill owners. So I did the briefing. When I finished, the chair of the Board of Commissioners, a man named Ray Dorner, sort of a simple guy, but he's a nice guy, said, "Damn, we need to do something. We need to tell people. We run out of trees, we run out of jobs. We need to get people so they can get trained." So I'm going to talk to Senator Mark Hatfield, get some money for our community college, brand new community college, that start training people for new jobs and new industries. No! You're not going to say a word. One of the mill owners. If you do that, the very best workers in my mill are going to be the first ones to go to the community college and get training and go to someplace else, and my labor costs are going to go up. And I'm not going to have it. And so I had a discussion of, well, let's contact the president of OSU, let's contact the president of the University of Washington and get them to get people out there to discredit this study. Oh, the science isn't settled. The data aren't good enough. No, we can grow trees. We're going to run out of trees? Come on. It's exactly that. And they were successful. They went out into the community and said, you know, all these problems, don't worry. Continue to do what you've been doing. Continue to drive your cars. Continue to burn coal. Continue to cut the trees. Don't worry about it. We'll take care of it. And if there is a problem, it's going to be caused by those tree huggers, not by us. Because we're really wonderful people. Right? We are the tree growing company. Right? No, not us. And you'll be fine. Those are in the days when the mill owners lived in the community. They knew their neighbors knew them. And yet they were still going to con every one of their neighbors, and they did. And I can say that because I sat in that room. So, here's a better way to understand what's going on. Some economics now. The way that this gets cast is often the economy versus the environment. We'd really like to have a nice environment. We'd really like to have clean streams. We'd really like to not have poisons out in the woods. But we got to have jobs. You got to have economy. So we got to give up the environment in order to have the economy. GDP, gross domestic product. You probably heard that. We have millions of accountants who feed information about the goods and services produced by killing nature. We have banks that spend an awful lot of money on this. We have a tremendous thing trying to protect their interests, and to heck with the rest of us. And here's how it works. Cash for carcasses. So here's how our economy looks at why nature is important. It's important when we kill it. We kill the fish? Hallelujah. We kill the trees? Great. We kill the river? Great. As a sidebar, if you're concerned about rivers, I encourage you, go look at some of the photographs coming out of the Klamath River right now, because they just took down one of those dams. And they have some fantastic pictures of just an ugly, ugly, ugly dam. And now that river's running. Wow. Hit me in my heart. Cash for carcasses. So when people are this economy, we have to do this. Let's think about this. Is this the only way that nature can be valuable to us? Because this is the way that it has been for hundreds of years. This concept comes older than that, but it certainly comes out of 16th, 17th century Britain. The rich found a way to kill nature. And we're still doing it. But this is some research done by some colleagues of mine in 2008. They looked at the value of salmon in the Rogue River. And it's old, but I think it's telling. Salmon in the Rogue River were important if you killed them, commercial fishing. $1.4 million a year. Sports fishing, you go out and have fun with them, and sometimes you kill them. 10 times that. But now that bottom line is, we don't kill them at all. We don't want them to die. And economists in my career have found out ways to start to measure this. How important it is to not kill nature. And people all around the world are saying that that's really important. They don't want to see nature dead. Oregonians especially said they don't want to see salmon disappear. It's called, the technical term is the existence value, the value of having salmon in existence, more than $1 billion. So we are starting in my career to build this body of information about what is the economic importance in dollars and cents of not doing cash for carcasses, of not killing.
I have a question. What are some
Sorry.
examples?
What are some examples of how that 1.5 billion becomes actualized? If someone says, well, how can that be? What?
It becomes actualized in several ways. That's a really great question. Part of your question I'm going to interpret is when I use the word value, I bet everybody in this room thinks price. The value of something is the price. I'm talking about something that is not traded in a market. Okay? What is the value of your child? Okay, you're not trading your children in the market. But your child is more valuable than anything you can find in the market. Same thing with salmon, same thing with clean air, same thing with clean water, same thing with having forests that are not poisoned and distorted. We all want these things, but they are not ever traded for money. So they are actualized within our quality of life. That's pretty vague. It actually starts to show up, and we have research to show this, is that, you know what? Places that have stumps don't grow as quickly as places that have pretty forests and clean water. So if you want to have smart people creating new jobs, bringing income to your community, Seal Rock, Walport, Newport, Eugene, having really crummy water that's going to kill you coming out of the tap? Doesn't work. So eventually it gets around to real dollars and cents. But you got to think about it. And what we find across the board is that these existence values, they're small and they're big. Okay? Commercial fishing. That's maybe 2,000 people, maybe 10,000 people who go out and catch fish and get cash for that. Sports fishing, it's going to be about 10 times that. People who sell lures and fishing equipment and gasoline when people are going and taking their boats out and all of that. For the existence value, it is everybody in this room. It's everybody in Oregon. It's everybody around. And it's going to be a small amount per person, but it's everybody. Now, yeah, there are a few people there that you got to worry about them, but it's everybody. So it may be, you know, that it's $10 per family. Well, we have $1.7 million, 1.7 million families in this state, so that's $17 million just right there in Oregon. And then there are Washingtonians, and then there are people in New Jersey who don't want to see the fish disappear. Because it's not right. Good question. Sidebar. I anticipate that some of what I present is going to sort of make sense, and then when you're taking a shower, you're going to say, what did he say? I will invite you to come back and ask for clarification, because I'm open to doing that. Next. And then this is the kicker. This is where you folks are. I get rich and you pay. It's a heck of a deal. What this shows is that we have corporations who make decisions to generate benefits for themselves. So they have the monopoly, rich person. But what's really going on is that they get rich only because they can push the costs onto everybody else. So there's a corporation out there that can get rich by cutting trees and growing trees and being part of the timber industry in Beaver Creek, can fertilize, can spray poisons, so they get richer. By the way, they'll write that off on their taxes.
Getting even richer.
To get even richer. So you pay. And that's where we are. That's where we are across all of this, cash for carcasses, all of this, what is the importance of nature? And by the way, I'm going to use the term importance, not value. I'm going to use the term importance. So we don't, because I've seen too many people, when I use the word value, they see market, they see money. We're not talking about money.
What does the phrase non-market mean on the right graph? All of this makes sense to me.
It means that an awful lot of the cost to you in your water, the cost to you when you have your grandkids come over and you run water out of the tap to give to your grandkids and you worry, there's no money exchange. That's all totally non-market, but it is a real reduction in your well-being. It is a real cost to you. It just is not operated through a market. So over here, excellent question. Over here on the left we have market, market, market. This is business school. This is banks. This is accountants. Over on the right, we don't have that. I sometimes get involved in court cases. And there are all kinds of economists on the other side, but they come from a business school. And they simply don't get it, because in business school economics, you have to have, what are the profits? It's money. And I talk about people getting killed.
That's all the social sciences on the right. Maybe. That's all the soft social sciences.
Well, I'm really struggling with saying that it's soft or it is less real. I'm saying it is more important.
Maybe it's hard to quantify.
It is very hard to quantify. But it is more important. It is what is underlying those warnings from the 15,000 scientists, from the 2,000 journals, from James Hansen. This is it. This is it right here. Exxon gets rich. Your kids are going to pay the price. Or if you're in Portland and it gets hot this summer, you're going to pay the price. The same thing with timber. So let's talk a little bit about water. This term, external costs, the costs imposed outside of the corporation, imposed on society. What we know is that when you have a clear cut, the amount of water in summer goes down by 50%. That's not good for fish. Next. Oh, by the way, those clear cuts make that water an awful lot hotter. This is probably hot enough to kill fish. And oh, by the way, reduced flows and hotter flows means that you're probably going to have harmful algae blooms. And so if you want to take your dog out or run along the stream, your dog goes there and takes a drink and your dog dies in the afternoon. Yeah, it happens. And it's happening a lot more in Oregon right now. Next. Taxpayer subsidies. How many of you got a property tax bill? Okay?
Every one of us.
Industrial timber corporations don't get a property tax bill. Because they persuaded the Oregon legislature, oh, these tree huggers and spotted owl lovers mean that we can't log, so please, please, please give us an exemption from property taxes. We're wonderful people, and it's those tree huggers that are doing this. And so, yeah, the legislature and every governor since has said, okay, we'll give you an exemption from property taxes. It's a heck of a deal. So if you would like to have better schools, if you would like to have a better fire department, if you would like to have better roads, if you would like to have a Department of Transportation that can keep the roads clear, somebody's got to pay, but rich people don't want to pay. Corporate owners don't want to pay. And it was one thing, again, back in the 1970s when the mill owner lived in town. And so neighbors could say, hey, pay your taxes. But now these are Wall Street corporations. And 1/3 or more of Wall Street shareholders don't even live in America. They're not American.
board foot, what's that?
Okay, this says that the taxpayer subsidy for Bureau of Land Management is $200 per 1,000 board feet. Okay, it's sort of Latin, 1,000 board feet. For the Forest Service, has been as high as 600 per 1,000 board feet. This is research that a friend of mine and I did before the pandemic. I don't know what it is right now, but I'm assuming that it's something quite similar. This has been going on for a long, long time. Greenhouse gases, exactly the same thing. Corporations get rich to put greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. You and I pay. External costs. Next. So what to do? This, I believe, resonates with every person in this room, as far as I could tell. And I applaud you for that. And it's, in my view, heartening that we finally are seeing research that actually tells it the way it is. We ought to be angry that people are getting rich and making us pay for it. In 2018, I did some research actually to estimate what is the cost that climate change will impose on Oregonians per household by sort of the middle of the century, so sometime soon. I did this in part because in 2009 I headed a team of about 10 economists from across the United States, and we did the very, very first analysis of what are the costs of climate change state by state. We looked at Oregon, Washington, and New Mexico. The big numbers. Nobody had ever done that before. So then in 2018, I started to do it again because between 2009 and 2018, we sort of had these whack jobs come into Congress and start taking over everything. And so the pressure on the legislators to be nice to the whack jobs, and it just all got lost. Climate change isn't really a thing. You know, it's really God that's doing this. It really isn't a thing. You're just trying to make us ruin the economy by doing something about climate. What does climate mean anyhow? And you remember the senator from Oklahoma who brought in a snowball and said, if I can hold a snowball, there isn't any climate change. There isn't any warming. I've got a snowball. That sort of thing. I looked at increases in food prices. Some of you may have seen this. Anybody buy rice lately? Yeah. Rice costs are going up because rice crops have failed. Next. Increases in wildfires, increases in wildfire smoke. Both of those cause a loss of income. If it's too hot and it's too smoky, people who work outdoors don't go outdoors or shouldn't go outdoors because it will kill them. Or they don't have their kids go outdoors, and so they stay home in order to take care of their kids. And so they don't work, they lose their income. All of this is tied together. Deaths from heat we have quantified. Surprisingly, there's very little data out there on people made sick because of heat. We just don't have systems that compile the information. Decreases in salmon populations and reduction in federal service, what that means is that you pay taxes and it goes to take care of increased hurricanes damage in Houston or Florida, instead of having that money come back here and deal with things that we would like to have a deal with. Next. And here are some of the things I didn't even look at. So just those 7 things. And I was just doing arithmetic. I wasn't doing analysis. It's just arithmetic. Research out there says food prices are going to go out by this amount. Multiply that by the number of households. That's what it is. And I didn't even look at these things. So all of the estimates of the economic damage, the external costs from climate change, they are all just a trivial part of the reality. And that's one of the messages I want to have you take away, is I'm going to give you some numbers now. And they're just a trivial part of what the actual truth is. This is what makes me angry in this state. I could fight the oil companies, I could fight the coal companies. I just look at that and say, you know, that's someplace else. I really can't have much of an impact, but this is my own state. 1/3 of Oregon's greenhouse gas emissions come from timber, come from logging. The largest single source of greenhouse gas emissions, more so than cars and trucks. Next. And this shows our timber harvest. And over here in the 1980s or so, we were up here around 8 billion board feet. And then with what happened in, running out of trees to kill, it's been around 4. This was the Great Recession. It dropped down, but it came right back up to 4. So the previous slide shows that the timber industry is our largest single contributor of greenhouse gases. This shows that they're not making any change at all in their behavior. Don't worry. Keep doing what you're doing. This goes back to, don't worry, we're going to run out of trees. Don't worry that we are going to have climate change. Don't worry that we have ecosystem crises. Don't worry. Keep doing the same. And this is exactly it. And this is why I am angry. This is why I am here today. So I hope that some of the information I give you can help you be angry as well. Next. So let's try to dive into this. This comes from these 3 things. And I want to make it clear. I just saw an interview with the president of Hampton Lumber. And he talks about we have to manage forests in order to have them be economic important. We have to manage them. Well, what a great word, manage. I mean, who wants to have unmanagement? I've seen some kids that have been unmanaged, and I don't want any more of that. I'll manage my kids. Manage it. No. It's kill. You're killing the trees. Next. Deb. Here's one of the tricks. If you kill that tree, it ain't going to get any bigger. If you kill that tree, it is not going to continue to take carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. It just isn't. And you lose that. The industry for the last 30 years has been very successful around the world saying we're not responsible for that. We are manufacturing. That's something else. But no, let's take that into account. When they kill the tree, it no longer takes carbon dioxide out. Yeah, now they plant little bitty trees, but the little bitty trees never ever catch up with the amount of carbon that would have been taken out if they let the bigger trees grow. And so the president of Hampton Lumber says, in effect, the only good tree is a tree that we can kill. It's not a good tree unless we can kill it. No, what he says is, management is the best thing to do about these forests. We need to manage them. What he really means is we need to kill them.
I literally read a comment on one of our social media posts here. I do a lot of posting where somebody said that the reason you cut them at a certain point is they suck up more CO2 at the beginning of their life at the end, and then they get to a point where they're less productive, and then you cut them down. And this is from somebody who claims to be intelligent, is college educated, and is in a position to say a lot of things in our community. And I don't think facepalm is a big enough word. I let it go. I just kept talking about what I was talking about. The young trees suck up more CO2 than older trees because they grow faster, right? I hear that a lot. Can you address that? Or is that a forced question?
No, I hear that too. And here is a simple answer. Okay? It's a complicated issue, but here's a simple answer. Have you ever had a teenager?
Yes.
Teenager grows like crazy. The rate of growth is really very fast.
Yes.
Okay? If you have a little tree, it grows fast. Percent per year. But it's 1 foot high.
Right.
So even if it's 100%, it only grows this amount.
Right.
If you have a tree that is the size of a redwood or the size of a 250 foot tall Douglas fir and it grows 1%, that's a lot of carbon. That's the amount, not the rate. That's the amount of food, not the percentage of growth. Okay? That's just a simple response. Now there's a much longer response to that, but that's it. Okay.
And that's a piece of the disinformation that has been purposeful.
You bet. Where do you think that guy got that information from?
Department of Forestry.
Yeah. Okay. Second. There it is, right there. This information is a little bit old. Talks about national forests. When this information came out, there was a lot of hoo-ha about this. Oh no, that can't be that can't be true, absolutely can't be true, absolutely, absolutely can't be. The data are wrong, the science isn't finished. There's more and more research that says, yeah, right here, Lincoln County, these trees can take more carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere than any trees in the world.
Why is that? Just the plentifulness of them?
Yeah, this is a great place for trees to grow. And the trees figured that out millions of years ago. So they ended up here. So you have trees here that really, really like these conditions. I mean, it rained really hard the last couple of days at my house. And you could almost hear the trees go, ah, thank goodness. You know, let's get on.
More than the Amazon? That's the one
Yeah.
I get compared to a lot.
Yeah. And that's increasingly
And they're burning
out there.
anyway.
Well, they're doing that too. But what she said is that they're burning the Amazon and getting rid of that. But, you know, we're logging. So, sidebar, the carbon emissions from logging in this state always exceed the carbon emissions from fires by a lot. Okay, they like to talk about how bad fires are. The amount of carbon that goes up when you see forests in this part of the world burn, it often is less than 5% of the carbon in that tree. What you're seeing is smoke. A lot of that smoke is actually water vapor. Those are the little bitty things that burn to give that smoke. What's left of the big carbon that's sitting in the trunk of the trees and in the roots. So this is it, carbon per acre. That was number one. Don't kill the trees. Number two. This is a diagram that represents U.S. averages, so it may not apply exactly here in Lincoln County, but the message absolutely applies here. If you have 1 unit of carbon in a live tree, right? When you log, about half of that ends up as residue. Or we call that slash. That slash ends up in the atmosphere very quickly. I don't know about you folks, but around my house, there have been fires and smokes all over crazy out there. Burning slash. So about half of that carbon, about half of the carbon in the tree ends up in the atmosphere when they burn the slash. What's left, a large part of that becomes mill residue that they burn maybe to operate the mill, to dry out the timber, dry out the lumber rather, or they just throw it away and it rots. You then have transportation associated with all of this, and by one estimate then, nationwide, only about 15% only about 15% of this ends up as a wood product. Holy, you talk about cash for carcasses. This is the carcass out of that. Give me a break. Talk about waste. Talk about inefficiency. Talk about contributing to climate with disregard because they've continued to log at the same rate. Next.
A bowl is...
Bowl is a fancy word for the trunk. U.S. average, how forest harvest is utilized. What happens to it? That we can actually see that last little bit over here. Half of it's paper. What happens to paper?
Hopefully
It goes back up in the atmosphere really quickly. A lot of it is it just goes and it gets decomposed very quickly because we want it to decompose in our sewer systems. When it decomposes, the carbon goes right back up. This is what we call lumber and wood, lumber and veneer. These are panels. This is your exports nationwide. About 3% of our logs are exported straight off. It's a little different for Oregon. Next. And then there's this. That carbon dioxide, this is why I'm here. I'm the economist. I translate all of that into economics if I can. And the reason that I am doing this for you and that I'm doing it with other groups is that when I talk to people, even with myself, do I really understand what a metric ton of carbon dioxide is? Do I really understand what a 0.01 degrees Celsius global average increase in temperature really is? Nah, I can't get my head wrapped around that, but if you tell me it's $1 billion, I sort of have an understanding what that is. So I'm here to try to translate all of this carbon stuff, and a little bit more, into what I hope are some units of measurement, some reference points that will help you then use language that you can talk to people about. This isn't about metric tons of carbon dioxide, this is about costs to us. And that cost comes from very different ways. Direct, disease, injury, death. Property loss. We lose incomes, we lose jobs. Cost of rice goes up. And then there's fear. And we're seeing a lot more fear. When I grew up and I went to college and went to my economics class, we never really talked about fear. We never really talked about risk except for bankers having a risk on a loan. But now we are looking at the fear that not only did 1,400 people die from heat 3 years ago, what do I do if it gets hot next year? Can I survive? Can my parents survive? I'm afraid of that. Next. How big are these costs? Well, let's first of all talk about logs. In recent years, the average price of logs on a log truck is about $500 per 1,000 board feet, per MBF, 1,000 board feet. There are about 5,000 board feet on a log truck. It's $2,500, $2,500. So when you see the log truck go down, $2,500 worth of logs. That's what we get from logging, is $2,500 per truck.
That's all?
Is that all? Yeah, sort of stunned me.
I mean, they're huge. Well, they used to be.
But we have 800,000 trucks to get to 4 billion board feet. So the total value is about $2 billion, but I don't really understand $2 billion very well. I haven't had that in my pocket recently. But I can understand that. And associated with a truck. So I'm hoping to give you visual images that you now can carry with you. A truckload of logs is $2,500. Next. Is the climate damage, just the climate damage, using numbers estimated by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. Every one of those truckloads, the climate damage is $34,000. $34,000 worth of death, destruction, injuries, disease, fear. $34,000 of that for every one of those 800,000 truckloads. 27 plus billion. What about the plus? Why the plus? Because the Environmental Protection Agency only looked at 5 categories of economic costs from climate change. Some impacts on crops, sea level rise, some impacts on electricity costs to cool buildings, some reductions in income, and this fifth one will come to me. Health. Not only health, just the deaths from heat. That's all it is, just the deaths from heat. Just those 5. So we know it's bigger than that. How much? I don't know. Maybe it's 100 times bigger, I don't know. It's enough to scare me. Next. So, the ratio, 14 to 1, just the climate costs that we know that the EPA has estimated, just those versus the value of the logs, 14 to 1. Oh, but wait a minute, logs are now $652 per thousand. Okay, fine. Do the arithmetic. I don't think you're ever going to reverse that ratio, especially because we know that the actual climate costs are multiples of what we have estimated by the EPA. Next. Here's some perspective. If we take those numbers, the total 27 plus billion, divided by the number of households, that's $16,000 per household that the timber industry imposes on society. So on our behalf, there are such wonderful people that are doing this for us so that we have a good economy. Thank you very much. And I'm being cynical, I hope you know. I'm insulted by this. I'm insulted that somebody manages baloney. Somebody kills trees in my state and imposes these costs at that level for my household. And then the federal agencies actually estimate that each increase in the risk of death is about $10 million. They put a price tag on it. So every year, those damages from the timber industry, from killing trees, is equivalent to about 2,700 deaths. But let's be real, people. These are killing people. I actually have been in places where I have seen kids that have died from climate. That's the reason they died, was climate change. Next. But there's these other things. It's really worse than that because there's the biodiversity ecosystem, the water, salmon, subsidies, the risk. Let's just talk about the biodiversity and ecosystems very quickly. Next. This comes from the World Economic Forum. This is not tree huggers. This is the center of economic research by the insurance industry around the world. Globally, 1/3 of the forest has been destroyed. And all the rest. That's why it is a crisis. That's why if we do a little bit more, we push these ecosystems a little bit farther, they collapse. And the life that we would like to have doesn't exist anymore. And I knew that they were going to pay attention and shut me off, so.
And I'll take this opportunity to say, if you're parked in the back, you have blocked the neighbors in. There's a red car and a white car, and you have to move your cars. If you're parked in the back.
Back of this building?
Back of this building. Okay. Thank you.
I think my computer was overheating.
Okay. Let's go back where I had per truckload. The biodiversity ecosystem costs of that crisis. Research done by the UK, British Treasury. Not the tree huggers, not the environmental ministry. The Treasury concludes that we are to the point around the world, we have pushed these ecosystems, this biodiversity so far that whenever you hear that an industrial exploitation of the nature to make it worse, on average, the rate of return is about 5%. And that's actually true for the timber industry around the world. True for the timber industry in the United States. But if we instead took that money and invested in conservation and restoring the ecosystem, restoring the rate of return would be about 5 times bigger than that. Research done in Washington, 2007, quite some time ago. So it's going to be even more so today. Found that on state lands in Washington, if instead of killing trees, they actually invested in letting those trees grow, so you had better streams, so you had cooler streams, you had more water in the streams, you had more food in the streams, that the salmon, the increases in salmon population would be 5 times the value of the logs. But what did the industry do? The industry persuaded them to go out and kill the trees anyhow. Okay? So we're going to get close to wrapping this up if you just hang with me for a while. If you add in the biodiversity to the climate, it is now $48,000 per log truck.
Oh my God.
48,000. It's almost 20 to 1. Round numbers. And I'm sure that it's more than that. So every time that you see somebody say, hey, isn't that a great log truck? That's a job. Good for Lincoln County, good for whatever. It's 20 to 1. Bad. It just is. This isn't something that Ernie Niemi made up. These are just the numbers. And oh, by the way, that translates into $22,000 per household. So killing trees, the economic cost to society from killing trees in Oregon is $22,000 per household per year. And it's about almost 5,000 deaths per year. On our behalf. But, come on, you're going to hear this. What about jobs? Got to have jobs. Okay? Well, no surprise, because I show you some information about jobs. What happened in the Great Recession is that lumber production dropped, timber harvest dropped, then it jumped back up to 4 billion board feet. Not surprising, the jobs went down in 2008, 2009, and didn't go back up.
Yep.
They cut 1/3 of the workforce. Bam, like that. On average, they do it in bunches, but on average, they have eliminated 1,000 jobs per year for the past 30 years.
The wonders of mechanization.
Well, its mechanization is number one, absolutely. But what's happened to the size of the trees? They go from this, they go down to little bitty things. You don't need mechanization and all the trees look the same. Little bitty things, they just run them through. So it is a decision to manage the forest, not the mechanization in the mill. It's the decision to kill the trees. In the early 1990s, as we were going through, and I lived through this, I participated in some of these debates, with spotted owls, and the timber harvest on federal lands was going to collapse, and it's because of those damned owls. No, it was because they had killed so many trees, there weren't very many trees left. That's why. But anyhow, set that aside. We saw the industry said, in part, make it so we don't have to pay taxes. And if we don't have to pay taxes, we will let the trees grow to 85 years. Because that's what all of this hullabaloo about owls is about. 85-year-old trees. Right on the cusp of becoming old growth. Not true, but that was the argument. 85 years. We'll do that if we don't have to pay property taxes. What are they cutting them now at?
30, 35?
30, maybe 25 around my house.
Well, they plant them densely, so they can't grow any bigger.
Well, whatever. They kill a bunch of little trees. So, this was the cost to society, biodiversity. That's okay. I don't think any the less of you, Deborah. I want you to know that.
Okay, I'm getting there.
Okay, other research done by a friend of mine named John Talberth. And he goes out in Oregon and he looks at counties that have timber harvest. You know, so he doesn't pay an awful lot of attention to Lake County, Malheur County. And he looks at what is the correlation between timber harvest and poverty. Chung! More timber harvest, more poverty. Okay, if you would go.
Keep going?
Keep going, keep going.
Tell me when to stop.
Yep. But, there. We're talking about jobs and incomes. But, we have to do this for jobs and incomes. Next. What we have seen is that the jobs per log have gone down. I was hoping you get this because it's much better visual than just words. Used to be more than 12 logs, okay, at the end of the century. 12 workers per million board feet. 12 jobs per million board feet. By 2012 it was down here around 6 and it's going down. This is not an industry that is generating jobs. This is an industry that is killing jobs very systematically for the technological reasons and for the tree killing reasons that we talked about. Next. This is what I explained. The timber harvest came right back to 4 billion board feet. Employment didn't. Employment dropped in the Great Recession and never came back. Next. Higher cut, more poverty. Higher the cut in these counties, the lower the median wage. Median is the one in the middle. This is not an industry that pays workers really well. It used to, when you and I were younger, I was able, as a young person, long ago, I was able to work in the mill in Klamath Falls during the summer and earn enough to pay for school, pay for university. Can't do that anymore because they just don't pay enough money. Next. The industry likes to say that they are the ones that support rural communities. They hold them together. And you can't imagine. Maybe you can, but I don't think you can imagine in the 1990s, here we have a proposal coming from President Clinton that we are going to drop the harvest, the amount of killing of trees by 90% on federal lands, which means that overall for the state of Oregon it's going to drop by 50%. and sociologists from, I mean, they're coming out of the woodwork. I'm going to do my PhD research on how this federal decision coming out of the White House has destroyed communities, rural communities. So in 2000, the year 2000, the National Research Council, which is the overseer of research in the United States and the federal government, had a conference. Come present your research. And the research was just the opposite. They found that the more concentrated the industry was in a community, this is what you got for that. You got more unemployment, more poverty, lower birth rates, more infant mortality, blah, 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 more arrests. And they didn't even throw in drugs. Next. But wildfire. We've got to kill trees. We've got to manage. This is what the guy from Hampton said. We've got to manage these forests, otherwise they're going to burn. No. Research summarized by a man named Dominic De La Salle. If you can ever persuade him to come and talk to you, he's fantastic. He lives over by Ashland.
Yes. Will you talk him into coming down here?
I'll talk to him if you tell me that. He's really wonderful.
Yeah.
And he's a nice guy. Don't tell him I said that. Here's what he says. Logging will do nothing to get us out of this wildfire mess because the wildfire mess is a function of temperature and wind. That's it. Now, yeah, there's a little bit around the edges. You can see this, you see that, but it's temperature and wind. And you know what? When you have these really big trees, 85 years older, you know what happened? Have you ever walked into one of those forests?
Yeah.
On an August day?
Yeah.
It's cool. That means that the temperature down on the ground, where that fire is going to spread quickly, most quickly, it gets into that and it just slows down. That turns out is a big deal. Okay? Oh, another thing. Before I drop this. How many of you have driven up the Mackenzie River or driven up the Santiam River where they had the fires? Okay. How many of you, this is a real test. Okay. How many of you remember yellow number 2 Ticonderoga pencils? Yeah. Okay, pencils. And you take them over to the pencil sharpener and you do this and they come out and they're really pointy. You drive up the Mackenzie River right now and you see millions of these little black pointy things sticking up like that, and they're all crowded together. And what we have learned is no surprise. I'm not a scientist, so I can't say beyond that, except I'm not surprised. When you have all of these trees jammed close together and a fire gets in there, it burns like crazy. And that's what's happened up there. As I understand the science, it says that when the fire went from wherever it started and got into one of these plantations, it moved so fast and so hot that the people in the communities couldn't get out of the way.
They didn't sweep the forest.
Sorry?
That was a Trump thing. We should be breaking.
Okay, so what do? This is another but. We've got to have wood products. Okay, I get it. We need to have wood products. Remember I said if the benefits exceed the cost, fine. We need some wood products. But let's stop burning slash. I mean, in sort of rough terms, you could double the amount of wood fiber available if you just stopped burning slash. Next. You could increase the amount of lumber and veneer if you didn't put it all into paper. We have options. The reason that the industry does not do that option is because they can make more money, they can get rich by making us pay, making you pay. If we say we ain't going to put up with that anymore, then they will find new options. And here's where I end up. Don't kill the trees unless you can demonstrate that the benefits exceed the cost. And right now they can't. On a ratio of about 20-1. Next. I don't know if any of you saw this. This came out about 3 weeks ago. Holy.
60 Minutes had a special on it.
Hey, I tell you, this is a different world than the one I grew up in. A 3D printing a house in Japan for about the price of a car. But this is concrete. Yeah, it is. But you know what? The concrete industry is starting to realize that their existence depends on their ability to not be so intensive in their consumption of carbon, production of carbon dioxide, that they're finding answers. And so they are actually, an awful lot of research, an awful lot of this comes out of Japan in this case, or in Europe. They're reducing the carbon intensity of all of that. And this friend of mine, John Talbert, I mentioned him before, he started doing the calculation. What is the carbon intensity per pound? Concrete, timber, lumber. Concrete's like this, lumber's like that. An awful lot of carbon in that wood per pound. Next. So what to do? Share that with your friends, share that with your neighbors. Share that and say, this has climate impacts, this has ecosystem impacts, this has water impacts, this has air quality impacts, this has killing people impacts. It also has economic impacts. Yep. I wish I had a magical answer for you, but this, as far as I can tell, is it. Learn, and again, I applaud you. You all have learned an awful lot about this stuff and you're angry. I applaud you for that. Learn more. Get angrier. Continue to act. Talk about that. I want to jump. Do this, but realize that if you go down into that hole, it can be very, very harmful to your health. So stay healthy. Talk to your friends. Talk to your community. Stay healthy.
There's a meme from our friends in Lane County about action is the antidote to feeling despair.
Can be. I can see some people with despair. Some people are acting and they are drowning in despair. So I accept that, but yeah, stay healthy. And then what do? Keep learning. I'm trying to give you some economic information. I bring that here because my experience has been that most Oregonians just don't understand the economics. They're familiar with markets, but you're talking about non-market? What does that mean? A non-market economy? What does that mean? I'm trying to help you understand that it is real. Set aside the word value, do importance. What is the economic importance of these things? What's the economic importance of your children and your grandchildren being able to not be killed? Being able to walk along and enjoy what you've enjoyed all of your life. Talk, help, take this message, help other people understand. If you don't feel comfortable talking about it, then Deb or Barb can connect you with me, and I'll help you get through the words. Get the words in your own voice. Talk to people. Say, look, yeah, that guy's talking about all kinds of crazy stuff, but the reality is, you see that log truck? That log truck is only worth about this, but the stuff that's killing us is about this. Oh yeah, I get it. Help them understand. Log trucks. Dollars per log truck. Then eventually get down to these things, which I can hear you're doing. Challenge the people who are running your systems. Yeah, mad as hell, I'm not going to put up with it anymore. Thank you very much. I really do appreciate your time. One more. I think there's one more. Is that the last one?
Are there?
Yeah, I guess so. There should have been one that had a email address on it. That's okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Deb. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it.